Hello, my name is Kim Miller. I am a cohort 10 EDD doctoral candidate with Baylor University. It is an immense honor to be able to present the findings of my problem of practice in preparation for my upcoming defense. And I want to give a shout out to my faculty advisor, Dr. Julia Earle, for her amazing help and work throughout this project. So, the research of this study focused on teachers as the primary interventionist. It's an explanatory case study exploring the relationship between teacher self efficacy and response to intervention implementation in a K 12 Christian school. This presentation will include a problem statement, the literature review, the purpose statement, and the overarching research question. I'll explore the theoretical framework of Albert Bandura, the methodology that I use to answer this research question, an overview of the findings and results, the implications of those findings and recommendations for others, as well as assuming that I successfully defend my plan for distribution of these findings in a way that's meaningful, and then a slide about gratitude and thanks to those that helped make this happen, and then my reference slide. So while I've been in education for over 20 years as a teacher, I've been in administration for the last 10. And I have really cultivated a heart for teachers, particularly those that are supporting students that struggle, that are twice exceptional, that learn differently than their peers. And during this time of leading and teaching and equipping, I began to recognize that often when students, especially many students, face academic challenges, teachers would often struggle in their perseverance of helping those students and almost exhibited a powerlessness to affect change. So, the purpose of this study wants to be able to investigate what informs teacher agency and their ability to do this to meet students' needs. And research shows that RTI, response to intervention, does provide a systematic way to address support for struggling students, but 95% of this intervention rests on the shoulders of classroom teachers. Despite extensive research on the effectiveness in RTI in public school settings, private school teachers report feeling inadequate to be able to implement this. They struggle with having a lack of training and resources and even ongoing support, and that these sometimes serve as barriers to their implementation and to helping struggling students. So within my literature review, I go over a history of response to intervention, how it came about. I talk about the varying multi-tiered systems of support that are available, what RTI is and what those three tiers are by definition and where they take place and who are those implementing it. And I looked at the different variances of approaches that schools took and even states took in implementing RTI. We looked at RTI and student outcomes and the correlation there and the things that influenced positive or a flatlining of student outcomes. And then the importance of all of this is implementation fidelity, knowing that that rests on the shoulders of teachers as primary interventionists. What were the things that caused differences in fidelity of implementation? Then, of course, that evolved into the correlation between implementation and a teacher's self efficacy, particularly that around teacher perception, the power of professional development in RTI, and particularly looking at teacher tiered systems of support, similar to that of students. And then again, the overarching context of this study, all of this occurring within a Christian school context, and what that relationship is with inclusion, particularly what theological imperatives there are in Christian school settings for this type of inclusionary thought process. So, the purpose of this study, again, is to be able to examine what enhances or inhibits teachers' perceived self efficacy and their ability to implement RTI in a mixed ability classroom. And my research question is how K teachers' self efficacy beliefs inform this implementation in their classes. And I did this by looking through Bandura's tridactic reciprocal causation model, particularly looking at how personal factors such as efficacy, cognition, knowledge, beliefs, emotions impact that of behaviors, which could be the way that they implement their teaching performance, their skills, their motivation, their persistence. And then the external factors that often teachers can't control, such as student success or failure, class climate, resources, pandemics, class sizes, those type of things. And the reciprocal causation of each of those and the influence that occurs on implementation measures. And then just focusing in a little more closely on personal factors, we looked at Bandura's four sources of efficacy: their mastery experiences of a teacher, their success or lack of success in implementing great instruction in their classrooms and success with students, vicarious experiences of being able to learn from others or from observing others or books or courses, verbal persuasion, how they receive feedback, how they give encouragement, take encouragement, collaborate with peers, and then emotional arousal, their ability to really keep their emotions in control when faced with multiple demands at once. So the methodology again was an explanatory case study within a K-12 Christian school. There were 9 participants that were K-8 general classroom teachers and specialists. We did use stratified, purposeful sampling of these teachers in heterogeneously grouped classes, and I used 2 validated surveys, semi-structured interviews, and class observations. So when we look overall at the findings of this study, 7 major themes emerged, and they all were represented here within that first quadrant of personal factors. You'll notice they all start with the letter R to help with remembrance of them. But when we look at that first and probably the most powerful part of Bandura's theory, that of mastery experiences, you can see that student responsiveness, the speed by which students respond, and the fact that student success begat more success really encompass that idea of overall responsiveness. And 8 of our 9 participants said that this was a primary motivator, a potent motivator for them. And then their own personal experiences, their ability to be in classrooms where they could take risks and be able to learn and get these mastery experiences. And so teacher readiness was a powerful theme that emerged. And then under vicarious experiences, they noted that observation, social media, targeted PD, and courses and books all provided relevancy for them. They were all very relevant things that helped them grow by watching others. And then verbal persuasion, getting feedback early on, student feedback, parent feedback, and even relationship to the giver of that feedback mattered. So relationship was a certainly powerful theme that emerged here, as well as their ability to reflect on that feedback and respond. And then under emotional arousals, dealing with imposter syndrome, external factors they couldn't control, mistakes. This really built up either a positive sense of resilience, or sometimes the resilience was weaker, making it more difficult to be able to implement intervention measures. And here within the connections to literature, there were a lot of connections that I could find. I would say that a place where there was a bit of a divergence was when early in their career, they may have initially been resistant to implementation. This study found that only when teachers really truly had good, successful mastery experiences to build upon was there any other sort of ways of efficacy that they were built anyway successful. So without mastery experiences, too much constructive feedback in particular early on was not viewed as constructive, that teachers really need a few years of some successful experiences first. Under behavioral factors, this is through observations. This is what I saw and what matched with their interviews, with what I was seeing in a classroom, with those 3 tiers of support. So I was looking at implementation effectiveness, barriers to implementation, and their motivation. And 4 themes emerged here. So a teacher readiness was affected by sometimes a lack of experience or support, the relationship teachers had with students that they really could capitalize on making those instructional decisions, responsiveness to the levels of engagement of students, and then their resilience in the classroom. When mistakes occurred within the class or challenges occurred, were they able to keep pressing in? And then again, here with connections to the literature review, I would say the one area that there was a small divergence was that setbacks could prove a little less threatening over time. But this somewhat diverged that within my research that struggle has the potential to bring discouragement when mistakes occur. And again, really depends on the quality of those initial mastery experiences. Did they come easy, or was there enough struggle in there that really produced a effective confidence? And then environmental factors here, 9 out of the 9 participants said that relationships were one of the strongest, powerful motivators for them, student and parent relationships. resources that they were provided for implementation. Again, responsiveness of administration when they reach out to them, needing clear authority from them. And then there's a reciprocity here of the impact of all of these things, all of these themes and components on a teacher's efficacy as well as their implementation measures. Again, connections to literature fairly much aligned to what my research shows. And you can see here this bidirectional influence that existed between those 7 themes, with personal factors having all 7 themes represented and behavioral and environmental having a select 4. But again, this influence definitely gave teachers efficacy beliefs and their ability to implement interventions effectively was incredibly successful. So an example was a participant describing that she was really perceiving an imposter syndrome when she was comparing herself to colleagues, especially her teaching skills, that within personal factors that influenced her motivation to be able to contribute during grade level planning meetings or ask for help under the behavioral factors, which simultaneously was occurring while she was trying to triage multiple demands at once. You can see how the trifecta of those 3 causation factors really were influential, particularly to a novice teacher. So, in terms of implications and recommendations for Christian school administrators, the implications are really being mindful of PD around adult learning principles, utilizing those ESA Title IIA grants to be able to help fund some of that needed professional development, particularly ongoing. Really redesigning teacher induction programs early on to make sure that their external factors, their loads are manageable, that they have a mentor teacher, that they're getting lots of feedback early on and lots of opportunities to grow and learn in a safe place. And then having tiered student support services so that the tier 3 intervention and maybe even tier 2 in those first few years can occur outside of the classroom and not be placed on the teacher's shoulders. So what that means is that they need to understand and foster efficacy through providing constructive feedback, communities of practice instead of just one-time PD, fostering that collective efficacy. For teachers, they need to know that learning from others is important. So having peer observations, cultivating student relationships, knowing that that covers a multitude of instructional mistakes in a classroom. And then when needed, based on the research and of this study, that you can fast track students that are most at risk and not go through that typical progression as usual. And so to really be listening to themselves and being able to speak up for that. And so for teachers, really in Christian schools, being aligned to that faith-based mission, coming back to your why, and for them to pursue research-based practices outside of their 4 walls. Often Christian schools can be myopic, just comparing themselves with themselves. That's important. Future researchers love to see more research in Christian school settings that are small and independent, and looking at the impact of teacher-student relationships on student outcomes and intervention measures, really trying to do some more robust experimental designs there and really measuring instead of linear growth, looking at that sustainable growth over 2, 3, or 4 year period and the impact of that. For teacher training programs at the college level, looking for internships, externships, apprenticeships for them to very early on get out into the field and start teaching while they're doing coursework, not waiting till midway or to the end of their programs to do that, maybe even getting involved in campus ministries. And that sort of idea and a recommendation of interleaving mastery experiences with other forms of learning and growth are impactful. Plans for distribution are to present these findings in a 2-hour presentation to my own faculty and staff, and then a more targeted presentation for a couple of hours with my admin team with very actionable items for our internal school and for changes that we're going to be making based on this research. I would love to be able to publish to multiple academic publications, and I have a few listed here. And then I really would love the opportunity to get back out presenting at conferences that I put on hold when I started this program. But I would like to attend the CISA conference again this year, where Dr. Linda Livingstone will be the keynote speaker. This is a consortium of private faith-based schools across the country. I'd like to present at the National Association of Independent Schools, and then if I can, the American Educational Research Association conference in 2025. So I want to give a huge shout out to the amazing, brilliant, faithful Dr. Julia Earle, to my second faculty reader, Dr. Brandy Ray, to Kevin Scott for your amazing support, help, and feedback from the Research Center, and to my beloved husband, Edwin, who has been my greatest champion. Thank you all for listening, and here are my references.